And we're going to hold our paper landscape style. I call this landscape. I call this portrait. So we're going to hold it landscape. I also would like you to tape it down to your work surface with either masking tape, painter's tape. And when you tape it, you want to try to get a nice frame so that when you remove the tape, you have the same amount of white space on all sides of your paper. You don't have to be perfect because if it's just one of those frameable pieces, the frame will help you out and cover some of it. Or if you were to mat it. So I'm going to tape mine down. I'm just taping it to a watercolor pad. And I want you to tape it to something that you're going to be able to lift up, because what we're doing is we're going to be doing a wash, a wet on wet wash, but we're going to hold our paper up a little to allow the colors to fade. So tape it to something that you can hold up. It could even be a cutting board. It could be a platter that you have. What you tape it to is really not so important as the ability that you have to lift it up. So I'm taping mine down. And because we're doing wet on wet and we are painting the whole paper, the reason we're taping it down, one, is so that we can lift it for the wash, and two, because the paper will buckle. So this keeps the paper from buckling. Do we have everybody yet, Ellie?
It looks like we're missing a couple, but I'm not sure if, does everybody usually show up, or some people relying on the recording? Yeah.
I think everybody usually shows up as far as I know. What time is it? Is it 10:30?
10:36 and we have 6, so we're missing 2. So
Okay, so it's 10:36, so we're just gonna.
How big did you want us to cut the paper down to?
I want you to cut it to 7.5 by 11. You're just basically cutting your sheet in half. Your sheet.
Actually, the paper is 9 by 12.
Your paper's 9 by 12.
Because I happen to have a pad of watercolor paper, and this is the paper that we were given.
Okay,
So it fits exactly.
You could do 9 by 12.
So do you want us to cut it
No,
the
you
9 by
don't.
12 in half, or do a full sheet of 9 by 12?
Let's just do the full sheet of 9 by 12. I thought Lotta told me you had 11 by 15, but that's okay.
Let me double.
If anything, I'd want you to cut it to the size of a piece of computer paper. So 8.5 by 11. Because we're going to use the piece of computer paper to help create our landscape.
Yeah, 12. Yeah, it's 9 by 12.
So just tape it off to 8.5 by 11. Instead of cutting it, just tape it off so it's roughly 8.5 by 11. You want your piece of computer paper
I got the tape too, Samantha.
to fit right in the center here. Can you see that? You want your piece of computer paper to be able to fit within this framed area.
This is what she's
So
saying. See?
So the 8.5 by 11 works fine because the tape's going to take care of some of that. And we don't have to be perfect with it. 8.5 by 11 works fine.
Yeah, but here's your computer paper. So that.
And if you don't have computer paper, you can use any kind of paper you have. We're basically making a template that is going to help us create mountains. Is what we're doing. We're creating a template. So everyone tell me when you're ready. I don't want to go too fast.
Yeah.
Still taping.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for being my guide. Lotta's usually, with Lotta, I have her telling me what she's doing exactly. So I need that help. Thank you.
That's okay. You're welcome.
Does everybody understand what we're doing?
Sam,
If you don't, let me know. You want your paper taped to a surface 8.5 by 11 is fine. And then we want a piece of, any kind of piece of paper, computer paper, line paper. We're just using it as a create our mountains.
If you're gonna be frustrated, I don't want you here. You can't rip too much of this off then, okay? This is why it isn't for kids.
I'm sorry, do you want the computer paper taped down as well?
No, don't tape the computer paper down, just have it at hand.
Okay.
Just
Don't
get
tape
your,
it down. You're just making a thing around it.
get your watercolor paper taped down.
Yeah.
And after you have that taped, let me know. And you're gonna need a pencil.
Number 2 pencil?
Yeah, perfect. Tell me when you're ready.
You want me to spotlight your video now?
Sure.
Right.
So what we're gonna do, tell me when everyone's ready. I'm just drawing a line on this so you can see it, but you're not doing this. We're gonna take our computer paper and we're gonna fold it in half lengthwise. Like so.
Still taping.
No taping. Oh, you're still taping? Still taping or no taping? That's the question.
I'm still taping.
Okay, I'm gonna stop then and wait for everyone to be on the same stage in the game. I'm gonna draw with a Sharpie so you can see what I'm drawing, but you're gonna do it with a pencil. Is everybody ready?
I had a pencil, I can't find it. Come on.
Now, when you draw on this piece of folded paper, I would like the folded edge towards your chest or your belly area. You want the open end away from you. Open end away from you. And we're basically drawing 3 rolling hills. I'm going to show you on our 3 rolling hills. 1, 2, 3. And you can't do this wrong. It's nature. So I'm going to draw it with a Sharpie just so you can see how I do it. So I'm going to start here. And I'm going to start, say the half, I'm drawing on this paper, but you don't have to do that. Say the halfway point is here. I'm going to start a little bit below the halfway point. So I'm going to draw a rolling hill and another rolling hill and my third rolling hill. Let me hold that up. Nope. There. Can you see that?
Mm.
Everybody see that okay?
Mhm.
Okay. After you draw your rolling hill, you're going to take a pair of scissors, which I don't have, which I'm going to get. And you're going to cut along the black line. And you don't have to be perfect. Like I said, this is nature. We're doing mountains. Mountains are different everywhere. Don't look for perfection. That line was just a guide. So then you're left with this. So we're going to go back to our piece of watercolor paper. And you're going to open this up. And you're going to lay it on your paper, however it fits. Now my paper is a little bit smaller. And you're going to trace these rolling hills. The top. Very lightly, you don't want to dent your paper. Watercolor paper, if it's dented, all your paint is going to pool there and you're going to see the lines. So ever so lightly, you're going to paint that. So just draw a very light line. And then with your pen, now my line is very, very light. Would you like me to draw it with Sharpie so you can see it better? Let me do that. I'll do two. So this is the way this should look after you trace it. You're going to have a very light horizon line in the middle. So we're doing a sky, mountains, and this bottom half of the paper is going to be the reflection of these mountains in water. So you're also going to need very lightly your horizon line, very, very, very lightly. Do you see that? Does everybody see that okay? This is all
Yeah.
with pencil and it's ever so lightly, as light as you can possibly make it, just so you know where you're painting. After you do that, you're going to get your piece of paper that we just cut. And you're going to draw some more wiggly lines. But this is more, this isn't a mountain line, this is a tree line. So a tree line is going to look a little different. And again, your open edge away from you, your folded edge towards you. So this is going to just be a bunch of wiggly lines. It's to indicate what would be a tree line out in the horizon. Let me see if you can see that. There we go. You see that okay? Let me show it to you on the finished copy so you have an idea of what it's going to look like. It's this very dark purple line here. The darkest purple is what you're drawing now. So there's no rhyme or reason behind it. Just make some squiggles, make some lumps. Does everybody see that okay? I'm not going too fast. Okay, and then again, with your scissors, you're going to cut that out. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And after you cut it out, you're going to lay it on your watercolor paper. The crease indicates your horizon line, so try to line it up. And with a pencil, you're going to draw around the cut you just made. And I'm going to do it with Sharpie so you can see it. So you're doing it on the top and on the bottom, so you have an exact reflection. And I'll do this with Sharpie so you can see it. But all yours is done with pencil, ever so lightly.
Can you just show the last template you made?
Sure.
That's it. Thank you.
It's small. So you should have something that looks like this. There, that's good. You see that okay? Let me show you the finished copy again. This is what you're looking for. This is your goal. This medium purple and this ever so light purple are the same shape. This very dark purple and your second medium purple are the same shape. Is everybody doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me when you're ready to paint, because that's our next step. I'm going to leave the Sharpie on mine just so you can see where I'm painting. I don't know how. I've got some glare going on here. I don't know why. No. Maybe it was better, darker, lighter, brighter. Oh, that's terrible. Maybe let me turn off the overhead light. No, that's not so bad. All right. All right, so our first step is to create, as you can see, I've used purple here and a yellow with some orange in our sky for a sunset. Purple and yellow are complementary colors. So that's why I chose the purple. We're going to start with our sky first. So we're first going to do the top half of our paper, and then we're going to do the bottom half of our paper. And it's going to be a wet on wet technique. So our first step is to mix up a pretty yellowy orange for a sunset. And then I want you to have basically two colors for your sunset. Something in the yellow family and then something in the yellow orange family. And I want you to test it on paper. Make sure it's the way you want it to look. There's not a wrong sunset, so you don't have to worry. I'm going to mix it with a round brush, but I'm going to use my flat brush to paint it. So I'm going to use some orange. If you don't have orange, take your red and yellow and make yourself a pretty orange. I'm going to do an orange for some highlights in my sky. I'm gonna mix a nice yellow. This is a really lemony yellow I'm mixing. I'm not so fond of that. I'm gonna try to make it a little bit lighter. Very, very lemony. We'll soften it a little bit. And you want a nice puddle of paint because we're going to be doing a wet on wet for your sky and then a wet on wet for the reflection. I've got a yellow that I'm mixing. I'm also going to mix a yellow orange. I have the orange started. I'm going to add some yellow to it to soften that. And I'm going to mix a third color, which will be a hint of a red. An orange red with just a little hint of red for the sunset. So you want 3 colors to work with for our wet on wet wash that we're doing. And we're doing a gradiated wash, which means it's going to be darker at the top or more pigmented, and then lighter as it goes down to the mountains. So I have basically an orange red here, an orange yellow, and then a yellow. Is how I would label those if I had to label them. Like I said, make a nice puddle because you want enough paint. When you're doing a wet on wet wash, working quickly, and I don't know if quickly is the right word. You want to get your paint on your paper while your paper is wet. So you want to make sure you have enough paint so you can accomplish that task. We don't have a huge area we're working with, so it should not be too difficult. So tell me when you have your paints mixed and I'll show you what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use my flat brush. I'm using a flat, I guess it's a 7. Maybe it's a 6. I'm going to paint this on my Sharpie one, and I'm also going to paint it on one that just has pencil lines, just so that you can see what I'm doing. Tell me when you're ready to paint.
You seem so quick at mixing your colors, Susie.
Well, I have a little bit of practice.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. It seems like it takes a lot of practice. I have trouble getting the colors to match what I want them to.
And that's definitely, that just takes time and practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Okay, so we need a yellow and a
You need
orange
a,
yellow.
you need a yellow. You need a yellow orange or an orange yellow, and then an orange red. And this is a sunset. There's not a wrong sunset unless it was all brown. And that even could be on a bad day.
You don't want to paint it that day.
You're right. So on this paper that I've drawn just pencil lines, I'm taking my kneaded eraser, and this is where a kneaded eraser comes in very handy. What I'm doing is I drew very lightly, but I would like these lines to be even lighter. You can't even see them, but I like them to be, oh, there you go. You can see them. I like them to be just a very light suggestion. Some people use pencil marks as part of their art, so that's really a personal decision as to whether you want a pencil mark in there. So I just go with my kneaded eraser and I just slightly tap on them, and that lifts a lot of the graphite out so it's even lighter, because it is hard to draw lightly. So tell me when you're ready to paint the sky. And so I have the water that I've been using to mix my color is now, muddied up with some yellow and orange, as you can see here. And then I have my nice clean water, which that's what I'm going to use to lay down this wet on wet technique that we're going to do. When I do my water wash on here, I'm going to use my nice clean water. And I'm going to look at these paints that I just painted. I always look at them how they look on a piece of paper. I'm actually thinking they're kind of light. I don't know if you can see that. You can't even see it really. Not happy with where they are. Hopefully they're not. I'm going to make them a little bit darker. Is everyone almost ready?
Mhm.
And we're doing a sky. Like I said, we really can't do this wrong. As long as we got some pretty sunsetty colors down there, that's all that matters. Okay, so the next step is getting your paper wet. And I want you to keep in mind when you're wetting your paper, you really don't want to touch your mountains. You want to go right next to them, because wherever it's wet, the paint's going to flow there. And this is when we have to work sort of quickly. We're okay because our paper's not too big, but if you were doing it on a bigger scale, you're using a bigger brush and you're working quickly. So we're going to take our brush, we're going to wet it. We're using a flat brush. And we're gonna take the water and we're gonna drag it from the left to the right. A good amount of water. I'm putting down water. And now I'm gonna outline my mountain with that nice edge that this flat brush makes. I'm just gonna go over it to make sure the paper is thoroughly wet. I'm gonna push any extra out to the side of that tape. So my paper should be wet. How are yours? Wet?
Getting there.
And I'm gonna use a smaller, flatter brush to apply my color. I'm gonna start with my medium orange, the medium orange yellow. And I'm gonna drag it across the sky. You wanna load your brush and try to drag from one end to the other.
I'm sorry, was that the medium or the light yellow?
I'm using the medium right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Medium.
I'm gonna then put in some of the lightest yellow next. I'm also gonna hold my paper up a little and let that paint drip a little. If it's going past your line, you can take a dry brush and get the excess off. It's almost like a little bit of an eraser. And the one thing I didn't grab was a paper towel. So I'm gonna go grab one in the kitchen. So it's probably hard for you to see that. I have basically a light yellow wash there. I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm just going to go around the edges and make sure I've picked up any excess water. Now, while the paper is still wet, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some darker pigments in here with a round brush. I'm just going to go across the sky. You know how the sunsets have those lines, those horizontal lines of color as it's setting? That's what we're putting in. We're just putting in some lines of color. I'm then going to use the darker orange and put that at the top. Like I said, you really cannot do this wrong. It's a sunset. And I just went back into my palette and actually dipped my brush straight into the orange I have. It's a different orange than you have. And I'm just putting some streaks of that up here. And I'm going to do the same with the red, ever so gently. And just drag the color right out. I have some pooling of water going on the side. And I'm going to take a dry brush and lift that up. Let me hold this up and see if you can see it, okay? Not so good. Not the best color to see. There. Can you see that a little bit? There.
No, can you use it, the other, the phone, please?
Yeah, let me dab up this excess water I have and then I'll hold it up on my phone. So it doesn't pool all over the place. I don't know why I'm having a problem with color that I'm showing you. Can you see that a little bit better?
Mhm.
And you can really make this however you want. If you want more reds in it, put more reds in it. It's your sunset. While the paper is still wet, you can work on this. Once the paper dries, you have to stop because it's going to change the way the paint looks on the paper. So my paper is still wet, so I'm going back and adding some more colors in here. I want it a little more vibrant. My paper is starting to dry, so I'm gonna leave that alone in a minute. Got a little streak of orange in here. A little streak of orange over there.
How close to your mountain lines are you getting?
Right next to it.
Okay.
Right next to it. In a couple spaces, the water was going over my mountain line, and that's when I took the paper towel and dabbed it dry.
Got it.
So after we do the top, we're going to turn our paper upside down, and we're going to do the bottom. The same technique, darker at the top, lighter at the bottom. Same technique. Wet your paper first. Drag the paper across from one end to the other. Drag the water across, I'm sorry.
Here's a tip. Don't wear a fuzzy sweater when you're painting with watercolors.
Is it getting in your paint?
Yeah, I just had to scrape out some
Some fuzz.
blue fuzz.
So now I'm doing the bottom half of my paper, and I'm going to do it the same way, same technique. You can start with your flat brush to get a base of color on there. And then you can go back with a round to add your other colors. And this is basically a wash technique. It's done the same way with a flat brush to put your water down, a flat brush to drag your color, and then you can go in with a round brush to add more details. And again, if the water is pooling anywhere, take your paper towel and dab that away. I'm going back with my round brush. And I'm adding the colors. I'm adding some orange. And I'm dragging it across the sky. And we want the bottom half to be a little bit lighter than the top half because it is a reflection. It would not have the same value as the sky would have. It would be lighter.
I'm sorry, the top half lighter,
The top half would be darker. The
darker.
one that we
Okay.
just did would
Right.
be the darker of the washes. The bottom half will be a little bit lighter because it represents the reflection. I don't know if you can see that okay. It's pretty wet. I don't want to hold it. I'll hold it that way anyway. You see that a little bit? This is a tough color to see on camera. I didn't realize. And I have some pooling going on over here, so I'm going to lightly use my paper towel to just get that excess water. You don't want to see a dab mark, so just actually use the corner of your paper towel and the paint will flow right to it. And I think I have some fuzz too. Okay, so lint there. Put that out of there. So how are your skies coming out? How are you feeling about this?
The fuzz is birds.
Tell me when you're ready to move to purple. How's everybody doing?
Good.
When we're done with the yellow, we're gonna wipe our palette up. We're gonna make 4 different values of a purple. So tell me when you're ready to do that. Okay, so your paper should be a lot drier now. I'm gonna take a paper towel and just soak up all these colors I made and get rid of them. And I'm gonna even change my orange water because we're gonna work on making 4 different values of purple. And now we can work with our round brushes. You won't need your flat brushes for these. How are your skies looking? You guys feeling okay with this?
Yeah.
So our next goal is to take, do you guys have violet? Or are you making violet with your scarlet red and a blue? All right, I have a violet, but I don't believe you guys do. So we're gonna do your, if you have Prussian or phthalo blue with your amaranth. So your goal is to get 4 different values of a nice, rich violet. And everyone's color may be a little different, and that's okay. The color is not so important as having the 4 different values. You guys have black in your palette?
Yeah.
You may have to add a pinpoint, and when I mean a pinpoint, I mean the size of a, that would be on a needle, to darken up your darkest value of purple. But before you do that, try to create your 4. The 4th one is not as, so we have, everyone can see that okay? This obviously you have to mix. This one you have to mix. This one you have to mix. This one we can create by just adding water. Okay, so I'm not so much worried about this one. I'm worried about your darkest, your medium, and then your 3rd. This lightest we can create out of this one by just watering it down. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so work on making your darkest value of purple, and you're gonna have to test this, and you may have to add a pinpoint of black to it to really get it. This is one time in watercolor. Let me show you again, that this paint is very opaque. This is very opaque, and this one is very opaque. This is more transparent. Another way that we can achieve this more opaque look is by painting over this section more than once. But when you do that, you paint it once, you let it dry, then you can paint it again. Same with this section here. And your violet may have more of a blue hue to it. That's okay. So we're going to start with our darkest color first. So I have a nice dark value right there. Do you see that? Pretty dark. And when we paint, I want you to look at something. I want you to make sure that when you're painting, you leave a little bit of white horizon line in here. That line indicates land. And I want you to leave it. Here you can see I touched and here I touched. It could have been by mistake. I painted this quite a while ago. I don't remember. I've painted this probably 3, 4, 5 times. But you do want to leave a white line there. I wouldn't make it a white stripe because I think that'll look too intentional and we don't want it to look intentional. So I think it's okay if the reflections touch in a couple spots, but you do want this white indicator of land. Does everybody see that okay? You guys are very quiet. I guess you're busy working, right?
Mhm.
Are there any problems? Are you doing okay?
Purples all look the same.
Say that again.
My purples all look the same.
Okay, so I want you to take one of those purples and I want you to really work on darkening it by adding more blue and more red to it with less water. And then test it on a piece of paper and tell me how it looks. We're going for our darkest value first. So if you can get one dark, we can, lightening up is easy. That's the easy part. We just add water. So what you should do is when you're dipping your brush into your red and blue, if you're trying to darken your paint, have your brush be dry. Take a paper towel and just dry your brush so it's really picking up pure paint and less water. Are we ready to paint in a minute, you think? Okay, so I have a nice dark color here. That one right there. That I made an X out of. Everybody see that?
Mhm.
Okay, so your goal is to get a nice, dark, rich violet. And we're gonna paint the darkest line is the top of your tree line. This one, this section right here is what we're gonna paint. And we're not gonna go right to this black line. We're gonna leave some space because this is gonna indicate land. So I'm gonna paint it so you can see what it looks like. And then I'm gonna also paint it on the one without the Sharpie. Because the Sharpie kind of, I mean, it's great that you guys can see it, but it kind of ruins things.
Now I made a center line, so should there be like two lines with a space?
Yeah, there should be a space, yes. Hold on, let me show you the finished copy. Do you see how?
Yeah, I just looking at my pencil line. I have a center pencil line.
That's perfect. That's perfect because you want to have this white area because it indicates land. And as you can see, my colors touched here and my colors touched here. That's okay. That's
So
okay.
do I leave the space above the pencil line or below it, or does it matter?
It's in the center. It's in the horizon line is where it would be.
Okay.
Do you see that? Can you see that okay?
Yeah, but I like, okay,
So you should have a pencil line here,
right.
a pencil line here,
Yep,
and then a pencil line here,
right,
and a pencil line here.
right. Okay,
When you're painting this section, you're not going to paint right up to there.
yeah,
And when you paint both these sections, when you paint them, you're going to leave some white.
got
And
it.
whichever place you want to leave it is fine. It's just an indicator of land. If they
Got it.
touch one another, it's gonna totally change the way it looks.
Mhm.
You need that white. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna paint the darkest color first, and that's gonna be here. Let me show you where. So you have the top of your painting here. You have your mountains, your first mountains. This one right here is the darkest, right here. Hold on, let me make sure you can see that, okay? Okay. There we go. This is the
So
top
it's-
of my painting. Okay. This is not the darkest. This is the darkest. So on the top section, the small tree line is going to be your darkest. And we're going to paint that now. You're going to go for the small tree line on the top of your painting. And you're going to fill that in, use a round brush and just paint right across until it's all filled in. We're not doing wet on wet here. We want a transparent look. Paint from left to right. We can go over this to make this darker once it dries. We can give it another wash. So this is our first purple. Can everybody see that okay? Here it's done without the Sharpie. And here it's done with the Sharpie. Now we want this a bit darker, but we're gonna leave it alone for right now. We're gonna let that dry.
I don't have enough paint.
It should dry relatively quickly because you're not doing a wet on wet technique. How's everybody doing?
Good.
So we're going from painting our darkest, and now I'd like to paint our lightest because we don't want to touch sections. We don't want to touch this section with this section because these are still damp. We don't want to touch this with this one because it's still damp. So we're going to go here. So we're going to go from our darkest to our lightest. So what you're going to do is you're just going to take a little bit of that color you made and you're going to add a bunch of water to it. We want the slightest pigment of purple. And make sure you have enough to fill the section. So you need a nice little puddle. It should be very light. So I'm going to test it on my paper. It's ever so lightly violet purple. Can you see that okay? Hold on.
Mhm.
Right there. Just a hint of color. And now I'm going to paint that on my reflection in my biggest mountain area, which is down here. And I'm painting it with one of my bigger round brushes, and I'm just dragging the color from left to right.
She's doing.
And that's all we'll need for that. That won't need any extra work. It's just as light purple as you can get. Now I'm going to do it on the other one without the Sharpie lines. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. So I've painted. You see that a little bit? So I've got the mountains and the tree line I've done. So we've got, this should be our darkest, this should be our lightest. This is not my darkest yet. I'm going to go over that one more time, but not until it's totally dry. So the next one we want to do, how is your top of your paper? Is it pretty dry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping in mind that this first purple we put down is not our darkest yet. So don't worry if it's almost the same as this color because we're going to darken this up. So we're going to do our mountain line. And this should be in a medium purple. And it may, like I said, it may be the exact color that we've already painted here. That's okay. We're going to darken this. But we can't darken it until it's dry because we're to darken things in watercolor. Lots of times you just do wash over, wash over, wash. But you have to do it when it's dry. We can't do this until this is totally dry. And mine's not totally dry yet. So we're just going to leave that alone. That's fine. So test your color. Make sure it's the way you want it. And we can always go darker, but it's hard to go lighter. So don't worry if it's just not so perfect yet, because we can fix anything like that. So I'm going to paint this top mountains. And it's not the color I want yet, and that's okay. We have to get a layer of paint on there. Drag the paint all the way out. And we're going to let that dry. And that's way too light, but that's okay. That is okay. As long as we have a layer of paint on there, that's all that matters.
So that's the top of the, by the
That's
sky.
top. Mhm. How are you guys doing? Questions? Our goal is to get 4 different values, but we're not getting them all at once, okay? It's not a one-shot deal that you get your values the way you want them right away. So you should have your lightest value here. That's a no-brainer, the lightest. That's easy. Let me show you the good one, the finished copy. This is the top, this is the top. This is the lightest. The lightest you should have on there. It's just a hint of color. Our darkest, we haven't gotten it as dark as we want it yet. That's okay. We're going to do that next. Can everybody see that okay?
Mhm. It's fun to see it come together.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad it's coming together. That is awesome. That makes me smile. All right, so I'm gonna get my round brush. And the darkest part that we're trying to achieve, I feel like mine is pretty dry right now. So I'm gonna go over it again with the darkest pigment I have. I'm gonna go right over it one more time. Because our goal is to get that a little bit darker, just not quite dark enough. And you want to drag your color from left to right. You don't want to paint over a section. One time, hit it one time and keep moving. It's the weird thing about watercolors, when you paint over it and it's wet, I don't know what the official term for it is, but it does something. It does something weird and it sticks out like a sore thumb. So just paint over it nice and quickly. Drag the color from left to right.
Oh, wow.
This is called layering in watercolor. It's a very popular technique, especially I find for florals, when you're trying to achieve all those different values that a flower has, there's a lot of layering involved. So that should be darker now, and that's good. It's still not quite as dark as I wanted. I wanted a little darker, and that's okay. It's a process. So can everybody see what I did there? So my lightest I like. I'm very happy with my lightest. That's perfect. This is my darkest. This is my second darkest. This may be okay once we darken this one a little. This may be okay once we darken this one a little, but I can't say for sure until we see how it looks. It's wet now, so we're gonna wait till it dries a little bit. Do you see that okay? Our goal is to have 4 different values. And like I said, it doesn't happen. We just don't make those values and paint it and it's there. It's a process of layering. Is that a good or a bad?
It's a good.
Okay, good.
I don't know. Do you want to see it?
Sure, I'd love to see it.
I don't think it's going to drip because I don't think it's wet.
Yeah, make sure, because there is a lot of paint. Make sure it's not going to drip before you hold it up. I love it. It's great. Awesome. That's perfect. You know what this is? There's so many things that are really good in watercolor to do. It would be good to just take your paper and draw a bunch of the same shapes. And then start with a color family, maybe blues, greens. Start with greens and do a really light green, and then a medium green, and then a dark green, and then add some blue into that green, and then keep doing a value scale. Learning how to paint is one thing, but learning how to work with the values is a whole nother thing in itself. And as you can see from this, it's just not like, okay, I'm going to make a dark, medium, light, and I'm going to paint it down. It doesn't really work like that. Your goal is to get a dark, medium, and light, but you might not achieve it the first time. And that's where you have to be patient, because you have to let it dry before you put a second coat on it. Unless you do wet on wet and you want those blooms, but we don't want those blooms here.
Is there a way to erase the pencil lines on the very, very light area? Or no?
Once there's paint down,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
Once there's paint down, it's not erasing. But this
Okay.
can be your practice. You can do it again. Like I said, I've painted this.
Yeah. No, I would do this again.
I've probably painted this 4 or 5 times, and each time it's different, and that's okay. That's the more you do it, the better you get. It's like anything, whether it's piano, soccer, unless you just have this natural born gift, which I don't necessarily have. I just enjoy this. All right, so I'm going to go for this third purple that I want right here, right now, because this is still wet. This is still a little damp. I'm happy with my light. How are we doing on time?
But
11:52.
8 minutes.
We have 8 minutes? Oh dear
Oh,
Lord,
I'm sorry. Wait, sorry. No, wait. Goes to 12:30, right?
12.
12? Oh, sorry.
We have
12.
8 minutes. Really? Oh my gosh. Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, that's okay. We'll finish this up next week. Not a problem, because this is the art of layering. And so that's good that we're putting it aside to make sure everything's dry. So I don't know that we need to paint anything else. I think we should just stop. I think we're good. We'll do this last section. This one right here I'm pointing to. This is going to be our third value. We have dark, darkest, second darkest, third lightest. And if we can't mix this color up perfectly next week, that's okay. We'll go all over everything again. We can do that. Does that make sense? Should we go for this one? Do you want to paint this one? We can paint this one if you want to.
I'm ready to paint it. But
Okay, let's
that's up
do it
to
then.
that's up to everybody else. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
let's put a layer on there, and then we'll have something to work with next week. Test it out on your paper, on your scrap paper. We're looking for the third darkest color. And like I said, it's hard to achieve that right from the get-go. But most importantly, when you're painting this third color, I don't want you to touch this other color, because we're trying to create a shoreline of land. So I don't want you to touch it. If you touch it in a spot, that's okay. So I'm going to touch there, but don't touch it everywhere. And remember, drag your color across. Start on the left, go to the right, and slowly drag your colors across. If you have any pooling or puddling, just take the edge of your paper towel and just let the paper towel grab the paint. Don't dab, it'll make a mark, and you don't want that mark. Just let the paper towel grab. I'm going to do it on this one so you can see it too. And then next week, now that we have our 4 values down there, then next week we can refine it and add our birds. And then we're going to start a little cottage, which I will send that to Lotta, and I'll have her either email it to you or leave copies in the library for you to pick up, okay? And I'll have her email you a picture of it. It's still up in my daughter's room, hanging on her ceiling somewhere. I better go dig it out. Okay, so do you see on this one, this is the one without the lines. I've got my lightest, second, this should be the darkest. It's not yet, and this I didn't even paint yet, which I will. But on my ones with the lines, I've painted them all. Can you see that? So we've got to work on darkening some areas, but that's okay. As long as we have a layer down, we can add as many layers as we want. You can always add layer upon layer. The key is it has to be dry. So I'm going to try, since we have a couple minutes yet, my goal right now is I'm going to darken up that space that I want the darkest. It's pretty dry. We'll mix a little more color. And that is a way to create darker colors, is just by layering layer over layer over layer. is how you create a darker color in watercolor. I'm going to go over this one. This is the one that I want to be my darkest. I'll go over it again. I'm going to drag the paint from left to right, working somewhat quickly. Keeping in mind to keep that white space to indicate land. All right. Can you see that? Can you see what I've done there?
Mhm.
So that's pretty good. That's pretty dark. I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. We're going to add another layer next week, and we're going to add another layer to this next week, and this too, but not here. And then we should be done with that. So how's everybody feel about this? Good, bad, successful?
Good,
Good?
good.
I know it's a lot of commentary.
Sorry, I had big shoes to fill.
You know what? She's painting with us, so that's what makes it, it gives us commentary because she's painting along with us. So, I think this is her first painting experience. I think it's been really fun for her. So how's everybody doing? You want to show me your work? You laugh. I love it. It's beautiful. Nice. Love it. Ooh, I love the sunset.
Ooh, pretty.
That's really pretty. I love the sunset. Nice. See, that's what's so great about this. I love it.
Thank you. You're giving me confidence.
Well, you know, you can't do a sunset wrong, but I love how you have that orangey in there. That's really nice. Anybody else want to share?
I can't seem to get the camera working today.
That's okay. You can share
Mine's
next
nothing
week.
to look at though.
Is everybody else okay? Everyone's good?
Yeah.
Okay, stop barking. Stop. Are we, is it time?
Yep.
It's 12.
It is 12 o'clock.
Okay, get down. Okay, well, that's a wrap. Okay, so just put these aside, let them drag. We're gonna finish them up next week. I think you guys did a great job. Do you have any questions? Is there anything you're struggling with or anything I'm not explaining well?
No, I love it.
Like I said, this is a challenge for me because when I'm actually normally teaching, not through Zoom, I can walk around and I can see what you're doing and, you know, I can give you advice, and it's hard for me to give advice right now. I can just basically show you what I'm doing, but that doesn't always translate into how you do it. All right, so I'll make sure that you, oh, shh. I will make sure you get these, oh boy.
Ashley, that looks great.
Why is this all wet?
Thank you. I jumped ahead a little bit.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Look, you have your 4 different values. It's perfect.
That's pretty.
It's very pretty.
Thank you.
Very nice. So we'll add the birds. So we'll have birds next week. and
No,
we'll
it's
have-
not.
Oh, does it not go?
Birds.
I
What
love
the
it.
heck?
That looks so great. Yeah.
Maybe. Oh, it says it goes on top then.
Oh, now it's dripping.
So look for an
Yeah.
email from Wada. I'm gonna send
That's what
you,
Chris thinks.
it's gonna be a piece of computer paper, like I think I showed you last week, that has the cottage all mapped out in a paint by number type style.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm gonna be sending you, and I'm sure she'll have copies of the library, and I'll send you a picture of what our finished product will look like, just so you have an idea. But we're gonna work small again, the same size. All right, well, happy painting. I'm glad
Okay,
everyone's
tomorrow.
doing okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll
Thanks for coming.
see you next Saturday,
Even
same
if
time.
possible. It's like,
Thanks so much.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye,
Thank
guys. Have a
you.
great day. It's
Bye.
beautiful out. Get
Good
outside.
week.
Bye, guys.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for coming.